What is up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to the NFL Pick 6 Show, week number 8. Two of the absolute best in the business. We got John Daigle, established the run, Rich Hribar, sharp football analysis, working hard on the worksheet. Everybody playing this week, Rich. No buys. So you enjoyed a couple weeks where you can, ditch a couple teams, but we're right back at it as far as the grind. 13-game main slate on DK, 14-game main slate on FanDuel. It's a lot. It's pretty daunting. Welcome to week 8. Rich, how are things?
Good. Yeah. It took a little longer than the last couple of weeks. We got a lot of information, and not just a lot of information, just a lot of injuries that happened again in the year of carnage. And there was a trade this morning. We've got more QB changes this week. I don't know if Andy Dalton was really in a car accident or not, but he's not starting. It's like there's a lot happening again. It's been a year where just like stuff keeps happening. Just give us one normal week, I beg of you.
You're starting the conspiracy theory already. That no, we also have Tua coming back, Young coming back. It's a good one for sure. We had some injuries on Monday night. That's going to affect some salaries. We'll talk about, I'm sure, especially on DK with some. Tampa Bay, obviously, their top two receivers, Dunzo for the foreseeable future. Godwin might have played his last down ever for Tampa. That could be it. Really, really sad. And it's probably been into the ground at this point. But, John, we love our garbage time as fantasy players. We love it. But, come on. Why was Godwin still out there? And then even after football died, they're still trying. They're still just take a knee and get out of there. It was just I felt really bad for Godwin, but that's how it goes. Did you have a thought on that?
My thought was that I got a text on Sunday from a friend who had an extra ticket to Andre 3000's instrumental on Monday night. And I thought, okay, I'll just work through the night on Sunday. I'll get the waiver wire prepped, ready to go. That way I come back and I publish it overnight. No changes needed. And then I got out of the concert, and next thing I know, every single thing had to be changed. So I just worked overnight again to change the entire ranking system up. I'm sure we will talk about Jalen McMillan at some point today.
Andre 3000, you saw instrumental. He plays the flute, I think. Is that correct? Was that the instrument we're talking about?
Play everything. And it's kind of cool because I'm all for the Jack White approach in making people put up their phones. And he didn't make you do that, but it was stressed very early by him that, hey, for this next hour and a half, even we don't know what we're going to play. We're just kind of jamming with our instruments together, all 5 of us. And so this is literally a once-in-a-lifetime moment. So if you can, please be as present as possible and put up your phone. So, okay, I put up my phone and came out to Chris Godwin and Aircast.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. So for comedians, I know it's a thing for comedians, but I knew that was a thing for musicians. But Jack White there, I didn't know that's something Jack White does as well. But I like it too. Do whatever you want. You're at the concert. You're paying the money for the ticket. But be present, enjoy, actually live the moment. You're not gonna go ahead and watch this again 3 years later. Just enjoy yourself. Put your phone away.
That album in particular, I know it's not for everyone, his latest one, but it's also a great writing album. So it is also on in this household frequently.
John, I didn't think you're old enough to use the word album. I feel like album is a very, very boomer.
What am I supposed to use? CD?
I don't know. I think it goes album, it goes CD, and then whatever's after that. I don't know what do they call. I don't know, Rich. What's the next? What do the kids call it?
What does Braden call it?
I don't even know if they listen to music. Do people listen to music still?
I still call every album an album when you come out with a big track, set of tracks. It's an album still.
All right, fair enough. All right, I thought that was an old timey word. I use it for sure. I wasn't calling you on it, but I thought that I feel like we've gone past that. I feel old when I say it, I suppose. All right, 13 gamer again, big boy slate. Everybody is playing. 13 game slate on DK, 14 on FanDuel. We're going to go and talk about our 3 favorite games. No totals above 50 unless something has changed in the middle of the day. Last I saw 49.5 is the highest total we have. Green Bay and Jacksonville. John, that's you're shaking your head. That looks like that's where we're still at. Jacksonville at home versus Green Bay. That is actually our first game amongst the 3 main games we're going to focus on. So, John, by all means, feel free to open up Green Bay in Jacksonville. Jacksonville getting 4.5, and it's 49.5 is our total.
There were a couple other games that could have made this top 3 as well, but I feel like we'll hit on those in the positional plays because it seems like the field is already condensing onto a couple of offenses as a whole. We'll touch on them later. Let's start with this one, though. And what stood out initially to me is just the fact that everyone has been getting there against Jacksonville secondary, including Drake May last week. They go up 10-0, get stomped for the rest of the game. He still finished as the QB4 on the entire week. Jacksonville secondary is something we want to continue targeting, as we've talked about in past weeks on this show. And that was my initial thought too, is okay, I'm coming into this placeholders on DraftKings and FanDuel, and Jordan Love definitely stands out. But then you start peeking behind the curtains, and a lot like we discussed, Rich mentioned, for instance, last week being with the Seattle and Falcons game being an all or nothing situation. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards too after breaking down this game, because just the way of how the Jaguars play defense in leading the league in man coverage, over 40% of their defensive snaps, playing cover 2 behind that man coverage as well with 2 high safeties. That's really been Jordan Love's bugaboo going back to last year for his career. 6 yards per attempt this season against man coverage, 34th in the league. This year. Last year, he was dead last with 3.9 yards per attempt. And then even against cover 2, he's 32nd in completion rate this season. It's also, I wonder what his ownership will come in as, because typically with the Packers, the ownership doesn't trickle along to tournaments because it's hard to stack him. Yeah. And it's another situation where we're trying to figure out the conundrum at wide receiver, since we've only had 2 games, including last week, where both Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson have finished with Jordan Love. I'll go ahead and dive into that quickly too, because we've only seen 22 routes against man coverage all year for Dontavian Wicks, but he's been targeted on half of them as like the guy who gets open deep, and you just cross your fingers that actually leads to production. The Jags are also allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing slot wide receivers. So Jaden Reed stands out in this matchup too. And then Christian Watson, of course, that's the frustrating part, because he leads the team in end zone targets in those couple of contests. They use him specifically in the red zone as that big body threat. And Romeo Doubs, everyone knows, he spiked a couple touchdowns a couple weeks ago, 10 catches, 94 yards this past game. So it's hard to parse through, admittedly. And that's why I think, I don't know what's going to happen ultimately, but if I play Jordan Love, and I am interested in that, I think I go overweight with probably 3 wide receivers, perhaps Tucker Kraft included, in this game.
Triples. You're running triples on a 13-game slate. I love it.
Perhaps so.
Yeah, Rich, it's always, it's the whack-a-mole question. We never really know, and it's always kind of tricky to figure out. And then they have Kraft as well as far as a tight end. We even saw Josh Jacobs catch his first touchdown ever in his career and did the old Lambeau leap. That was pretty cool to see. But I'm John's kind of setting it up. I don't play a lot of Love for the same reason. I don't know who to pair him with. Do you know who to pair him with? What's our best option?
No, I mean, and I always treat Jordan Love kind of like CJ Stroud, right? Like, even when I'm on him, he's a guy that like is hard to play just because, you have to get like the 4 passing touchdown game. Now, granted, Love does give us a few of those. So it's fun to latch on to. And I mean, the man's coverage stuff is like, I always talk about this behind the scenes, like Warren and stuff too. When we bring up stuff like, still, it's the Jaguars man coverage though that he's facing. It's like, that's the thing. It's like, you hear us all the time about receivers too, because we're in the weeds. Like, I'm in the content creation game, just like everyone else. We're trying to find unique ways to like present information and find micro edges. But you do always have to look at these things in context of, all right, yeah, it was because I remember talking about this with someone behind the scenes last year with DJ Moore. The Bears are going in to face the Browns last year, and DJ Moore had really great splits against man coverage. But then when you looked at him, all of like his stats against man coverage came against the Lions and Emmanuel Forbes. And it was like, well, this is different. Like, he's gonna be facing Denzel Ward. Like, we can't just like overlap these, right? It's like great to use for like a North Star, for like coverage looks, right? Like if a quarterback has this look, these are like the team for like schematically, they're running these types of plays when they see these looks, or quarterbacks are looking for, these types of, routes on the actual reads against these looks. But you still have to take into account like who these teams are playing and who they're going up against this week and who they have played. So I'm not necessarily as scared about Jordan Love having like really wonky, splits against man coverage to this point because the Jaguars have just been so bad, right? Like, when you look at their resume and like, you're like, Deshaun Watson got there against them. You're like, give up 30 points to Joe Flacco, right? This is one of the best fantasy quarterbacks we've had since last year in terms of floor plus ceiling. So I'm tending not to, to go like too deep into the weeds on that route here and just say like, yeah, this is a really good spot for the Jaguars pass game. The Packers passing game. The other thing about the Jaguars is they're another one of these teams that we talk about like in context over the years we've done the show. Why are they so good against the run? They need to be worse against the run because they're actually really good against the run. They just force teams to destroy them through the air. It was like the Lions last year. It's like, well, what if we just played man coverage and blitzed every play and we're awesome against the run? It's like, cool. What if we threw the ball 35 times against you then and did that? That's like what teams are doing to the Jaguars, and it's kind of hilarious to kind of glom onto. But yeah, I mean, the hardest part with Love always is like which guy. Like Reed's clearly like the best player, but the target tree is always so dispersed. Like Reed is a guy that gets there based on talent, but he's gone over 6 targets once. And like, you got to pay a premium for him, right? It's like the Debo Samuel corollary. Like when the 49ers are full strength, you love playing Debo when someone's out, and maybe someone's out the rest of the season now. But like you don't get a lot of targets. You're not paying for a lot of volume. I'm someone that loves that comfort when I pay top dollar for a player, right? Like, I want to know, like, oh, this guy can get 13 targets today, and maybe he sucks. Like 2 weeks ago when we all played CeeDee Lamb against the Lions, he didn't quite get there. But he got 14 targets and didn't quite brick out, right? So that's what you always worry about with a guy like Jordan Love, something that happened last week. And when they've had all 4 guys healthy, they've done a thing where Reed plays exclusively in the slot. Romeo Dobbs is kind of like their Gabe Davis. He plays pure X. He's a guy that gets involved in the run game, so he never leaves the field. And then they've been rotating Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson. I don't know if it's part preservation to keep Christian Watson healthy, or part they just have to find snaps for Wicks because he's been so good. But anytime Wicks has played, he's been the best target earner of the group. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to throw an athletic tight end into the mix now too. And when you look at him under the hood, you're like, great matchup, right? Same problem. Tucker Kraft has only gotten 20% of the team targets in one game, and it was a game without Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. So you're paying for all these players, and you don't know kind of where the targets are going to go.
And then you add on top of that Josh Jacobs and the fact you tack the Jaguars with running backs through the receiving game. They've now allowed 4 catches to at least run running back in every game since week 3. Not going to play Jacobs for the reason Reeves mentioned about the Jacksonville stout front 7 against the run, but he could definitely mix in as a receiving back there.
It sounds, it goes against the rules. Would you guys play Love, a quarterback that can't scoot, like naked? You're probably not supposed to. But like,
I think if he's got to be cheaper, right? But we used to do this. We did this a couple times successfully with Purdy last year.
Yeah,
we're like, we just
CMC
didn't know.
sometimes.
Yeah, but we did a lot of like where because Purdy also didn't run last year. He's running a little bit more this year, but where we were just like, hey man, we know that this offense is going to get there, and we know the passing game is going to get there. But what if we just don't bring it back?
Mm-hmm. Don't we kind of know that the offense is going to get there through the quarterback this week? Mm-hmm. Sort of, I think we feel pretty confident. 27 team total for Green Bay, like you said, better matchup to pass as opposed to run. By the way, jet-lagged Jaguars team, typically, I guess the team can decide this, right? Isn't that the rule when they come back from London? They can take a bye if they want to take a bye. I think that's one of the things, and I guess they opted against it. They've been there for 2 weeks. Yeah, just sort of throwing that out there. All right. Is Tank Bigsby now he's the guy, right? He's taken over ETN, and that's that. Like, it's been a flip. And is there any looking back here, John, as far as the Jaguars? And Brian Thomas looks like, again, this rookie class for receivers is spectacular. He looks awesome as a potential run back here. What do you have as far as the Jaguars?
It's just a problem with Tank Bigsby because that's who you would think you would want to play, but you really need the game script to go perfectly. He still hasn't run more than 10 routes in any game. It's as if not as if. What happened is Travis Etienne got injured, and then I'm a Dearness Johnson dynasty truther. I love Dearness Johnson. I'll never forget the pandemic season when literally everyone in Cleveland was out with the COVID or for injury reasons. They call on Case Keenum on a Thursday night football game, and then they just give the rock to Dearness Johnson 25 times, and he single-handedly beats the Broncos in prime time. Literally jumped off the fishing boat just to get over there and play football. Big Dearness Johnson fan, but does he need to be the pass catching back and basically have the same ETN role? Probably not. And the issue is that, kind of like what we've seen in the past with Bigsby, that if the Jaguars fall behind, it's no longer Bigsby's game. So although we think we want to use him, that's a big issue. And then also for the fact that parsing through their wide receivers, Brian Thomas obviously continues to be the sexiest option to run amongst them. But now we have these past 2 weeks since Evan Ingram came back, and Evan Ingram just went straight back to dominating targets, a team high. He's the only one getting over 23% of the team's targets. And it's Christian Kirk here is also depending on negative game script, the opposite of Bigsby, since in order to have him out there, they have to use more 3 wide sets. And that's why he's now 4th in the team in target share the past 2 weeks, as they've instead just leaned on Bigsby with the lead, including against New England.
Jags, what do you got, Rich?
Yeah, same thing with Daigle. I mean, Bigsby's one of these guys you like to play him when he's real cheap. He's not super expensive, but now we're catching him as a dogs. Like I loved him last week. I was bummed he wasn't on the main slate. Went hard on his player props. Also, funny thing, we bet his longest rush over 13.5 yards. He had 3 different 13-yard runs.
Oh,
like you SOB, Tank Bigsby.
Brutal.
Like you SOB. But we hit a nice little ladders on him all the way up through 100 yards too. Loved it. But Daigle's 100% on. Like we've seen the sample though. Like he has 2 targets on the year, 1 catch. 2 weeks before when he entered the game, when Travis Etienne left the game, it was all Dearness Johnson because they were in a passing script. You just have to worry that's going to happen again. The Packers can be run on. So if the Jaguars are hanging around in this game, he can get there. But that's what you need to worry about with him. Always the game script. And we got a few of those guys on the slate this week. We also have pricing was really tight last week, and this week it's not. And I don't know if it's because just there's more teams or not, but like the pricing's definitely not as tight as it was last week.
There's so many running back options though. Like I'm gonna need y'all at the end of the show because I can't dwindle it down.
We'll figure it out. We'll get to it soon enough. You need, if you're taking the Bigsby, Green Bay run back, you need Jacksonville up 14-0 early somehow. You just need to get a big lead, and all of a sudden you're feeling pretty good. If that's what you're doing, if you can tank, Love and a piece or two. If you're John, you're doing triples, which I love. I have a hard time getting there, but I love that you are willing to do that. I respect that for sure. All right.
The AOC lineup took down our little contest last week, but I did run some golf onslaughts, mostly because the Sims and what got steamed were Darnold onslaughts. We kind of saw coming, and Aaron Jones got there pretty much because Brian Branch took like the wrong route and stopping his outside run. Brian Branch was so excited he cut to the middle, and Aaron Jones just cut it back outside. But beyond that, we talked about how much we loved golf last week. Those were my best lineups.
We got to have a talk about optimals too this year. I mean, we've jumped the shark this year, I think, on because like we're not applying logic anymore. Like everyone people were just jamming in Jordan Whittington last week. And he even practiced the entire week. And like people were like, optimal Jordan Whittington. I'm like, well, this dude hasn't played. Like he came out of a bye and he didn't practice. Like, and everyone's like, we're gonna jam him in. And I'm like, are you sure? It was like a couple weeks ago, like when Najee was like spitting in optimals and like they had like 4 linemen out, and I was like, is this what everyone's doing?
So I have a confession. I had a team finish like 8th or 9th or so in like the single entry red zone or whatever it was on DK. Is that what it's called? Red zone? I'm not sure what it's called.
Red zone is the $50 single entry.
Yeah. I was 8th or 9th, and I had Whittingham in my flex. And Sean McVay is a liar also. We also say that. Man. He's like,
but even Juju, the dude, a guy pops up with a hamstring on Thursday. A dude that literally, again, another team out of a bye, and he pops up, and everyone's like, dude, I'm going to play him. He's fine. Like, what? Like, what?
At least he doesn't have a history of injuries. Oh, wait. Yeah, that was one I actually did get right. But I ended up playing Coker, and like he wasn't good. But like he helped me get the stuff that was good, that kind of thing. And it was just
he was out there at least. Honestly. I mean, it was just that we're gonna probably talk about that situation at some point, maybe with the Caleb thing, with this development that's going on with the Commanders. I'm not pleased about.
Yeah, that's on the menu. We'll talk about that in just a second. I assume that's actually game 2. We're done with game 1.
I don't think we have that one, but
we don't.
I don't know. Talk about just Caleb.
But we'll run it back. We'll run it back and talk about it for sure. I think there's more than 3 games. Like John was saying, there were several options to go, and not like super, super obvious ones. The second one we have is Philadelphia at Cincinnati. The Bengals taking themselves out of a hole. I think they're 3-4 now. They started off pretty slow this season.
They just start in October every year.
Yeah, they just like to make it difficult. They like to make life hard on themselves. 47.5 is the total. Speaking of coaches, geez, they couldn't get Barkley another. Like, I know they gave him one chance, but like, can you stop it? Let the guy have a good time and just stomp all over his forward team. That's unfortunate, but he gave him one shot. I guess that's more than he typically does at the goal line. Any event, Rich, we have Philadelphia in Cincy. Where do you want to open up?
I mean, I want to just top down, though. I think what's interesting about this game is that both of these teams were playing in like a lot of shootouts early in the year. And the last 2 weeks, they both played the same two teams. They both played the Giants and the Browns, and they've kind of slowed games down. And I think we could get back to having fun again. I think that both these teams are capable of pushing each other, and then we could have like an outcome where this game actually is fun. Now, we are still counting on, whatever Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore are cooking up right now. It is very odd, some of the things that they're doing. 2 weeks ago, Jalen Hurts ran the lowest amount of play action he ran in any game in his career. We saw kind of Zach Taylor sometimes does a lot of weird things. But this game, I think a lot of people could be saying like, oh, it's going to be slow. Look at Devontae Smith. He hasn't gotten targeted the last 2 weeks because the Eagles haven't thrown. I think we're going to see a lot more Eagles passing volume. I think we're going to see a lot more passing volume on the Bengals side, which could be a lot more fun because these teams aren't facing the Giants and Browns.
John?
I agree. And these defenses outside of playing, again, like Rich said, the Giants and Browns, especially the Eagles, were really bad until they played the Giants and Browns. And a lot of that's due because when you have the big guys in the middle like Jordan Davis, then you can stop the run when the opposing offensive lines are just injured and crushed altogether. But remember, like in the first month of the season before their bye, the Eagles in particular were allowing the league's highest rate of explosive runs. 9% of the runs against them went for 15 plus yards. And now we also have this signal that, again, going back to the Sims, kind of saw where the chalk was condensing. So I did try the Chase Brown 7% thing. It didn't go well, but the opportunity still gets better every single week for him. His share of backfield touches has increased in every game since week 2. So now if we're talking about just that growing usage against what we still believe is a very bad, if not one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire league, it's great. It's a great spot for Chase Brown. And if we think we're getting more volume in the passing game, that's what's also fun about this one. It's not just two bad defenses who we think could be up tempo. It's so condensed, especially on the Bengals side. Since week 3, whenever they got T. Higgins back, we have 43 targets for Higgins, 36 for Jamar Chase. The next closest on the team was Andre Yoshivas for only 14. It doesn't go anywhere, especially because we now have Mike Gesicki and Eric All, who are just cutting into each other's time. They've mirrored each other in routes and back-to-back games now. So it's pretty much Burrow, Chase Brown, Higgins, and Chase.
Chase Brown looks like a potential cash game play. I'm seeing him right now as like the 4th most popular running back. I know, John, you're mentioning all the running backs you like this week. Miami, I think, is the really interesting conversation. We're going to talk about all the Miami pieces when we run that back because, Tua's coming back and they have a great spot here against Arizona. Tyreek is tweeting out to play me in your fantasy teams. I don't know if you saw that tweet, guys, but it should be interesting. Like it's now or never. And did he have one target last week? I know I'm derailing the show, but you can't get the guy like a wide receiver's Hill for Miami.
Oh, yeah, did. I mean, yeah, I dabbled in some Tyreek stuff out of the bye, and it did not go well.
They weren't targeted in
manufacture.
Him and Jalen Waddle didn't have a target in the first half.
Our misery is over, Dean. It's coming to an end this week. I think.
Unfortunately, everyone also knows it's coming to an end this week.
Did you see Tyreek's quote today?
That's what I was referencing. He says, "We're back, baby. Strike up the effing band to start me this week.
No forward passes this week."
But like you come off a bye and you don't draw like just a wide receiver screen, a run, anything, get the ball in the hands. I'm gonna make the angle. I'm a truther here for the coach, but it's not great. It's not great.
My first thought about this game though was everyone's expensive, and then I started to build. I just wanted to build a couple lineups trying to see what I could do, and you can build like comfortable doubles in this game. Burrow doubles and Hurts doubles, which I was like, oh, this slate could be kind of jailbreak this week.
Can we just play all receivers from this game? Like, yes, we can do that, right?
I mean, it's harder to do if you're going to do Brown plus Chase, but you can definitely do like doubles with Devontae Well, because Higgins is like still underpriced. Like Daigle said, like his actual workload is incredible.
Mhm.
And I don't like he should be priced like he's like a top 10 wide receiver in terms of usage right now. I mean, he's dwarfing his career high in target rate per out run. He had more targets than Jamar Chase in 4 straight games. He's also facing the Eagles that have really struggled to defend good outside wide receivers to this point this season, especially ones attached to non-Daniel Jones arms. So, I mean, I feel like he's really underpriced. His role is really good. It's really just those two guys. All offseason, you heard about like T. Higgins' splits on and off with Jamar Chase, but like not enough people factored in the loss of Tyler Boyd, and like no one soaked up the Tyler Boyd stuff.
Yoshi.
And he hasn't been consistent. And we saw this a little bit with Kittle and the 49ers, right? Like when Kittle's like his ADP sagged all summer, and people were like, yeah, well, when everyone's there, Kittle doesn't get as many targets. But then when McCaffrey was out, Jordan Mason doesn't get targeted like Christian McCaffrey. So like no one was accounting for those Christian McCaffrey targets being Kittle's targets, right? And like that opened up more opportunity for him. Now that is just like a whole different situation right now for the rest of the season. It snowballed into something else. But there are all these situations where you factor in like the transitive property doesn't mean like bad players get it. And Yoshivas just hasn't been a good enough targeter on his own. And the Bengals, when they're throwing the football, they're throwing to their actual 2 good football players.
By the way, not to derail the show, but it's now become a weekly occurrence that Silva calls me in the middle of the show because he wants to ask me about FFPC pickups. Like last week was Noah Brown, even though he knows I do this show every Wednesday at the same freaking time.
Listen, I called the Noah Brown trap too. I called the Noah Brown trap.
You did. Was not in my cash pool in the slightest, was not in my turnip pool in the slightest, but it was shocking how many people were excited to play Noah Brown. I blame the big dog for that one.
I don't know if I was excited. I think it was, again, the nature of the slate and just like the pricing. You're just kind of forced to talk about those terrible plays.
That's why I played terrible Colby Parkinson instead.
Yeah.
I decided to spend my money on high-priced players that did nothing, like Tyreek Hill and Jameson Williams.
But at least you lived in luxury.
Daigle snuck it in there, but he did take the victory lap of he beat us with AOC as his quarterback. Like he kind of like said that without saying it. That's how terrible our teams were in our official contest.
I put up some lineups that put up some gross numbers last week. I got super lucky when me and Daigle always talk about how we did on Sunday. I got super lucky because I play cash on FanDuel only. I only play DK tournaments, and I didn't run Jaden Daniels in cash because everyone was playing that, especially that Whittington was chalk on FanDuel was really odd to me. But I literally broke even just by not having Jaden Daniels in my cash lineup. And I was so happy. I was never so happy to break even in a day.
Because to get to Jaden Daniels, you also had to do the play, like you said, that you weren't going to do in Whittington and or Juju.
And then people got to JSN too, which is a weird one. Although we're going to get back, I think, to him this week.
Yeah, we may take.
We'll talk about him in a second.
But that was another one when you looked at like the micro edge stuff. There was like a clear signal for DK Metcalf in that game and over JSN, and it played out 100% to that.
John, we're building a stack here for this game, and like try to keep, if you can, salary and all that kind of stuff in consideration. Are we starting with Hurts? Are we starting with Burrow? We're going to pay up for Chase. I know we talked about Higgins being the better dollar for dollar play, but the thing with Chase is what you're paying for is that upside. He's the guy that can drop 40, 45. Mm-hmm. He can get that 70-yard touchdown, and Higgins is good, but I don't think he's getting 40. I just don't think that's happening. Not that you need it again at his cost, but how would you build the stack if you could only build one stack from this game?
I think it'd be Burrow for me. Having said that, we haven't even touched on like the one player we need to touch on, AJ Brown, because it is as simple as saying you should play AJ Brown, but also where the Bengals are getting beat is out wide. And although in the last couple of games, they haven't allowed a touchdown to a wide receiver, Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson combined for 11 catches and 100 yards. Cedric Tillman and Elijah Moore combined last week for 14 catches and 122 yards. AJ Brown's weekly target shares now, as we continue to complain about Devontae Smith these past 2 weeks, AJ Brown's 3 games this year, 34.4%, 37.5%, and 35.5% of the team's targets. He's not going away. And that's how you beat the Bengals, is over top along the side. So I still love AJ Brown. Again, it gets expensive. I think I'm most willing, although I will admit it's an amazing spot given the rest of the running back options, I'm willing to come off Saquon Barkley and hope instead that Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown soak up those touchdowns. But, of course, Saquon Barkley would also make me eat those words.
Mm-hmm.
So Brown Higgins over Chase Smith is what I'm hearing.
I like Brown as well. I'm going to have to parse through it. Yeah, but I really like this game.
Yeah. Anything else here, Rich? I like the Brown call as well. AJ Brown. I like Chase Brown too. He separated himself from Moss. You guys are talking about that. Useful in the passing game as well. Calcaterra did nothing, but like also the offense didn't have to do a heck of a lot last week.
14 passes.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
I mean, it was the last 2 weeks, the Eagles have 41.9% and 35.4% drop back rates, by far their lowest rates this season. They always skew a little bit more run heavy because of Hurts. But to open the year, those rates are 51.4%, 51.5%, 67.2%, and 66.1%. Like not even in this, it's like it was like a different sport.
We got anything else here, Rich, or shall we move on and talk about?
A fun game. I'm excited for it. I think like this is you could build a lot of lineups around this, and I tinkered with a few, and like the way salary is this week, you can onslaught this game with like good pieces around it too, without even have to play like a Tampa Bay wide receiver or something.
Yeah, I like this one a lot as well. Last of the three we're going to talk about is Buffalo, Seattle. Seattle getting 3 at home, 47 total. Metcalf. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's going to play. We have no official ruling. If there's one that dropped in the last couple hours, I missed it. Do you guys have anything as far as Metcalf? I'm assuming he's not playing. Is that not the fair assumption?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, carded off. I assume he's not going to, but they seemed like they were at least hopeful. I'm going to lean no, but not sure.
Yeah.
They have a bye, I think, in 2 weeks. I'm trying to make sure their bye is week 10. So the original kind of report was it was going to be like a 2-week injury. So like it makes sense for him to miss the next 2 weeks, and then they have a bye, and then he just comes back. But it's DK Metcalf, dude. If there was one dude that's a superhero.
Yeah. And my only hang up with week 9 too is that it's a division opponent next week too. So maybe they hold him back for this one and bring him back against the Rams next week. Just not sure.
You got to be careful too, like playing some of these guys. You got to protect some of these guys from themselves. We saw it happen to Mike Evans on Monday. Literally another player who's had chronic hamstrings his whole career, right? And it's such a bummer because he's been played so good the past years, and then he popped the wheel, and then it's just for one game. You got to make sure these guys are right, man.
Well, they want to play. That's the thing.
I know.
Like
you got to. I'd say you got to protect them from themselves, man.
All right, Daigle, where do you want to start as far as Buffalo and Seattle? Amari Cooper making his debut last week, got a touchdown. I was at Keon Coleman telling him where to go. Like, go there and score. That was pretty cool. Still learning the playbook. What do you have?
How do we feel about the Keon Coleman Niagara Falls commercial?
I didn't see
great.
It.
Oh, that Dean. That's for after the show for you to get. That's your homework assignment.
I've not seen it, but I'm interested.
It's Keon Coleman being himself for Is it Niagara Falls? It's a traveling commercial, right?
Yeah, it's like a travel agency, but he's at Niagara Falls, right?
Yeah.
It's for like a travel agency, but it's
just Keon Coleman being Keon Coleman, man. Anytime he gets in front of a mic,
he does the Marshawn Lynch line too. It's like, I don't know if I love the ambiance of the decor. Oh.
Yeah.
Travel agents still exist. Like that's still a thing that we have in this world. Okay. Like good for them.
I think they're pretty popular just because people don't want to make decisions, and that they help out with that. I show up anywhere and just kind of wing it, even like if it's a different language, but that's just me.
All right. John, what do you got? Bills,
all right.
Seahawks.
I'll start with the Seahawks side, and that's why I think this one could be fun. Like maybe DK Metcalf, like we'll talk about the Bucks, maybe just the entire infrastructure of what Ryan Grubb does on offense crumbles. I still think there's enough here, though, to get by. Not only that, but although the Bills started out as a stout defense the first month, we've kind of seen them start leaking some big plays through the secondary. And that's what makes this one so much fun. Like 3 of the last 4 quarterbacks they faced have averaged over 8 yards per attempt. And we'll get Jake Bobo, I believe, plugged into 3 wide receiver sets. But I just don't ultimately think that changes the way they play with a top 5 pass rate, top 5 in PROE. Not only that, but also Kenneth Walker is the one who seems like he can't fail in this spot. And I'm sure ownership is reflecting that, but maybe I just go overweight anyhow Bills are one of only 4 defenses allowing over 5 yards per carry, also permitting the most yards before contact per attempt. And if you give Kenneth Walker a head of steam without touching him for the first 2.5 yards of his carry, it's not going to end well. It's not just that, but also just the difference in how he's used between this year under Grubb and Shane Waldron, his first 2 seasons, a 16.5% target share compared to just 6.9% in 2 seasons under Waldron. And so also, if we take away Metcalf, we're assuming the trickle down goes to wide receivers. But even last year, we saw that on 117 plays without Metcalf on the field, it was Kenneth Walker who got boosted with a 32% target per route run rate. This year, he's been targeted. It's only 12 routes, but he's been targeted on 38% of those routes without Metcalf on the field as well. So I think Kenneth Walker, although like everyone understands his floor ceiling combo, it may be even higher in this game than we're giving him credit for.
So early numbers on Walker ownership wise on DK 6%.
Really?
So if that holds, well, you said, I mean, you said at the top of the show, like there's a slew of running backs you like, and we'll kind of get through them. I'm sure we'll mention some later on, but like Brees Hall 32%, Achane 27, Gibbs 21, Chase we has talked about it 18%. Bijan Robinson.
The gross ones either.
I'm curious what the gross ones are. I'm scrolling down and. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it in a second for sure. Speaking of kind of sort of somewhat gross, you pointed this out in the pre-show conversation. I did take a peek, and I'm jumping over to Buffalo here for a second, Rich. 4K Kincaid, is that a trap?
What the hell happened?
90. He's in 93% of the lineups.
What happened though? Like who botched the code? Right?
Auto week. Dawson Knox got injured too. They decided to plummet him.
Someone had to just mess up. Someone hit the wrong button in the machine, right? Like
that is the floor. And like, do you want to hear the other guys that are if you don't play on FanDuel, the 4K, that is the doldrums. That is the worst, like tight end threes, essentially, that just block. So that'll be an interesting conversation.
Context, he's 4.9 on DraftKings.
Yeah, exactly. But tight ends might be back. Are they kind of remember they were terrible first couple weeks of the season? Kind of sort of somewhat back. Njoku, maybe.
I don't think your best ball team agrees with that for Sam Laporta, but yes, everyone else back.
Everyone else back.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I tried to make the case last week at 5,800 was too cheap for Brock Bowers.
Yeah, on pace for 110 catches or something like that
this
this season.
God, Bowers, get to the century mark in one of these games. Like, this dude is like a 98, a 94, like the magical yard. This is why the arbitrary bonus is broken, but it makes us care about these 6 yards.
It is pretty silly, the arbitrary bonus. I would not disagree with that. Rich, where do you want to go? As far as Seattle, Buffalo, feel free to cover it all.
This game makes me a little nervous because we've seen Seattle fail a few times this year, and I just worry that they just don't have enough dynamic players at wide receiver if they don't have DK Metcalf. I mean, we have a very small sample of DK Metcalf not playing because he's a superhuman, but only 25 dropbacks steer them off the field. But Geno's sub 6 yards per pass attempt. Last year, DK missed 1 game. Geno scored 13 fantasy points. I just like this is not an electric group of pass catchers without DK Metcalf. Like Jake Bobo's not doing it, man. So like, and JSN, like this is another moment, right? Like show us something different. Ryan Grubb has scrapped the behind the line of scrimmage stuff for JSN, but he's literally doing the exact same stuff he did last year. He actually has a lower intermediate target rate than he did last year and a neutral deep target rate. Like all his targets are still coming in the same area of the field. We haven't seen anything different from him. So it's really tough, right? It's tough to glom onto JSN and say like, all right, like here's your chance to smash. Cause we've seen the Bills also like flood some teams, right? Like if the Bills come out hot, like they've buried a few teams this year. And like, that's just, I worry that being in the range of outcomes for this game where the Bills just come out cooking and Seattle's in like a hole and it's just kind of a stupid game. Like that definitely can happen. I agree with John though, that the one value piece is still Kenneth Walker. I mean, Kenneth Walker, especially in FanDuel, he should be like 8.5, maybe approaching 9K over there because everything has changed for him. Like he's now a high floor, high upside player. He has kind of like the best of both worlds. He's being targeted in the passing game. He's 4 catches short of his career high of receptions already. So like he should be priced up as like one of the premier running backs, but he's not quite yet. He's slowly inching his way up there. The Bills did get Ed Oliver back last week and Terrell Bernard. They've actually been really good with Terrell Bernard on the field this year. But, I mean, Kenneth Walker's been kind of foolproof. We haven't seen him fail yet. So he's kind of the one piece where I say if you are going to play someone, you do it. The problem, though, with the Bills side, if we play that angle I talked about, dude, the Bills give the ball to everybody. Like, there's another one of these teams. Like, literally everybody plays. And then we're trying to incorporate Amari Cooper. Keon Coleman led the NFL in receiving yards last week. He didn't have a target with Amari Cooper on the field last week. So it's just like, we know Amari Cooper's going to play more snaps. We've got Kincaid still hasn't quite gotten there, but he's 4K on FanDuel.
You're playing him in your cash lineup on FanDuel, right? I assume
you have no choice.
Yeah, you just got to do it.
And he still was targeted. When Cooper was on the field, he still is going to be there. But like even the running backs, like we've seen Ray Davis start to creep in a little bit these last 2 weeks. Like, so like the Bills are kind of a whack-a-mole game themselves where like, if you just don't play Josh Allen, like you almost play Josh Allen by himself.
If Metcalf doesn't go, like typically receivers for the most part don't really move the Vegas needle, but Buffalo, like you said, Buffalo can just Metcalf being out really could subdue that Seattle offense. Do we like the Bills if it holds -3 in Seattle? I mean, just that can really, I feel like they can really suppress that Seattle offense, like you guys are talking about.
I don't have a betting take for that one. It's probably a good one, but I don't have any thoughts on that. Just because it could go either way. They could get drowned out, but Seattle has still given us all the reason to believe in them so far. But yes, without DK Metcalf, they could fail in this spot.
JSN, if Metcalf is out, JSN at 6-1 on DK, like, is that still like really good? I mean, he might have like 9 catches, but
Rich already said it though. It just takes a lot of faith to believe that his routes are going to change as a whole, since he's still touting that.
I mean, look at the guys he's priced around though, and think of the ceiling weeks that those other guys have provided. Like, Tank Dell could get you 20. Brian Thomas Jr. can get you 20. Like, Darnell Mooney's cheaper than him and has like 4 games. Like Romeo Dobbs, like all these guys have like so much higher ceilings, man. That's what makes it hard. I mean, he's a guy that's probably been perpetually overpriced all year. I mean, Jalen Waddle's 5'4". Like, I just think there's a lot more ceiling than JSN in that price range.
I just keep coming back to the fact that it was 2 coaching staffs that treat him like this too. Not like we could have blamed Shane Waldron over the offseason, which I did in some cases for best ball. But now it's another coaching staff saying this is how we're going to use him. This is how he should be used in the NFL, which is concerning.
Anything else as far as Seattle and Buffalo, boys, before we run it back and talk about the rest of the quarterbacks, receivers, and such that we've not yet discussed?
Seattle got a couple pieces back in their front 7. They're still really struggling against the run. I think in a smaller slate, I do take the chance on James Cook. Rich touched on it, that Ray Davis, like even his 16-yard rushing score was the very last play of the game for a blowout purposes. But also, if you think that's the case, like you're going to probably need James Cook then to do his damage before the 4th quarter, because then in comes Ray Davis to ice the game.
All right, going to go ahead and talk about Splash before we go ahead and talk about some quarterbacks we've not yet discussed from different teams. Splash, they're still running their Survivor Revival tournaments, as well as Pick'em and Fantasy Tier contests. Join the community at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Promo code ROTO10. Use that upon sign up for a $10 bonus for a limited time. Play $20 for quick picks entries, and you'll get an additional $10 bonus. And exclusively for those of you that actually use that promo code ROTO10, you'll get an additional $20 in credits when you play $50 in entry by the end of October. Go ahead and check out Splash Sports today. Be sure to use the promo code again, ROTO10, to get the best bonuses available. We do also want to mention RG Combo Light DFS. It's all about value. Best time to get best time to play right now. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey. All the sports are in play. Sorry to your Guardians, Rich. It was a good run. There still is some baseball going on. We have the Dodgers and the Yankees, which I'm sure America is going to love They're fully conflicted. For a limited time, you can get yourself a month of combo premium access, less than $80, $79 and change. That is $5 more than just NBA premium by itself. Get all the goods, get all the sports for just $5 more for the first month. Last thing, we do want to shout out the RG NFL Listener League. Do not forget to join in on the fun each week as RotoGrinders Listener League and play alongside other viewers as well as some of your favorite hosts. And if you happen to win, if you take it down, you win that contest, you get yourself a full month, a month free of RG Premium. Go ahead and check out the description for an invite to the contest when it goes live on Wednesday. That should be on the YouTube. Hey, if you guys are watching the YouTube, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Turn on those notifications. We appreciate those that join us live as well. By the way, I was in the comments section last week. Shout out to Rich. Bad job by me. Rich, you were telling me about Pharaoh Monk. I'm like,
Pharaoh Monk, yeah.
Yeah, the name was not Monk. Yeah, it was not familiar. But then I Googled after the show, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely know that one song that is telling the ladies what to do. I completely forgot that person's name. I guess they sampled the song that sampled Godzilla.
The Godzilla,
right?
Yeah, Godzilla.
There you go. All right. So, I was in the comment section last week, and I goofed. My bad. I got to stay in my lane. That is definitely – but people were shouting you out, Rich, for dropping the reference. Shout out to you and me. I will stay in my lane. I'm aware of that song, but certainly not my wheelhouse. All right. Rich, give me some of your favorite quarterbacks we've not yet discussed. Feel free to make it as gross as possible. Go for it.
Well, I do really like Burrow and Hurts in that game. Then we're going to see what we're going to do with Jordan Love or Josh Allen for the expensive guys. You can always play Lamar Jackson. No one will twist your arm if you want to. And then we've got to see what shakes out to all these cheapies, right? Like, do we get – we probably will get Jameis Winston. We might get Marcus Mariota as well. And then we've got Tua coming back. So, like, we've got kind of all these hot spots in the middle. I think people will definitely want to probably play Bo Nix as well. I like another player in that game a little bit more, but I won't really push back if people want to play Bo Nix because, again, Marcus Mariota got there last week on the Panthers. Like, it's just tried and true kind of with the Panthers as well. But yeah, so it's kind of a fun week. Open up. Like, there's going to be kind of, it's going to be choose your poison, right? Like, do you want to pay up for quarterback? Do you want to go mid-range? Do you want to pay down? I do think Tua is an interesting spot. I mean, historically, like these quarterbacks that come back off these layoffs are kind of let down, but for tournament purposes, it becomes an intriguing spot because you're getting this Arizona defense across country, early kickoff on a short week. This is a team that already is 29th in pressure rate. When Arizona doesn't, pressure the opposing quarterback, they're 30th in yards per pass attempt. They're 26th in completion rate. They're 25th in touchdown rate. I mean, if the Chargers could just convert in the red zone, I mean, Herbert threw for 350 yards against them on Monday night. Like with dudes, like he's out here throwing to Will Dissly. Like Will Dissly's out here cooking with 11 targets against the Cardinals. Like it's just, it does set up well for Tua. I do understand, like you do kind of have to, look at it with like him having a long layoff. There could be some rust, but man, the spot is really good for him. And, he comes with those price down pass catchers that we just talked about, the price of Waddle. And obviously people are going to want to get back on Hill now that he's cheap. I think you can also play Achane in those stacks. Like you can just Miami onslaught with him as well. I'll leave some of the cheap guys or whatever. I do want to talk about just the Commander situation last week, because I was someone that was in on Dalton when we recorded the show, and then I knocked him down and actually took him out of my pool as the week went on when it looked like Deontay Johnson was just like, had like 9 injuries. But we now have 4 weeks in a row where the Commanders not only haven't allowed a QB1 because they haven't faced like a set of quarterbacks, but all of those quarterbacks they faced have also scored fewer points than they had averaged coming into that matchup. And I'm like, well, what are they doing right? And then they are absolutely smoking quarterbacks, dude. They have a 42% pressure rate the past 4 weeks. It's 4th in the NFL. Caleb Williams under pressure this season, 4 yards per pass attempt. Like, this is still not a good offensive line. And Caleb had really nice spots against the Jaguars, who we opened the show with, in the week before against the Panthers, who we just mentioned again. So, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on with this Commanders defense. They're getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback the past month. So maybe if you would have told me a month out, man, Caleb's got the Commanders coming up, like we would have been like juicy, right? Now it don't look as good on paper.
Yeah, you mentioned Knicks, by the way, at 5-6. I think there's a chance, depending on, again, how everything kind of shakes out. I can see him being like a cash game quarterback this week, possibly on DK. Just 5-6 is really, really cheap. The Tua thing, the field's they're too sharp now, right, John? Like in the old school, people just game log. Like, why would you want to play Tyreek? Why would you want to play HM? Why would you play any of this nonsense for Miami? But everything kind of does line up, at least according to projections, and it kind of makes sense. Assuming Tua is good to go, that Miami should finally have they've been asleep for the last month or so. This team has been horrendous, but feels like an awesome breakout spot. Any thoughts on those quarterbacks that Rich threw out there? Anybody want to add to the conversation?
My only concern with Tua is that you would think we typically get unique by overplaying the situation. I think everyone is ready to overplay the situation. I think everyone's ready to get Tua, HN, Tyreek, and Jalen all together. And so if that's the case, maybe you have to mix in Jonnu Smith instead for one of them. That's getting really ugly really quickly. So yeah, he's a good play. I don't think anyone has any thoughts beyond that. Same thing for Jameis Winston. He's an amazing play, although Jameis Winston and the Ravens defense could both get there. Depends how you want to play it. I think 100%. The only other one I want to have on my list that no one's going to get to, and I do think it's a good spot. Don't know how much I'll play, but a pivot from Jameis Winston, Drake May is kind of interesting here. Everyone's interested in Breece Hall, and rightfully so, since the Patriots defense is just falling apart. Gerard Mayo called them all soft after the game this past week, even though it's his defense, so I don't know what he's doing. But in particular against the run, they're getting smoked. So great spot for Breece Hall. I'll go in depth in that in a second. But then across from that, maybe a little game stack going, because we've also seen, and this has happened with many different coaches, where they are very good at something, then they take on too much on their plate in the NFL, and they become bad at that duty. And I think maybe Ulbrich becoming interim head coach maybe also then has caused some stir in defense. They've leaked back-to-back 24-point fantasy performances to Josh Allen, who finished as the QB5. Last week, Russell Wilson finished as the QB3 against the Jets as well. And both of those quarterbacks scored rushing touchdowns, but one, that's what Drake May can do, of course, as 8 carries now. He's also been a top 12 quarterback in his first 2 career starts. Not only that, but Russell Wilson, even last week, went 5 of 7 for 115 yards on throws 10 yards downfield. They've been leaking big plays too. So it seems like a situation where, again, cheap paying down at quarterback, if that's how you want to build, you can build it through Breece Hall, Drake May, and kill the tight end spot with Hunter Henry.
I was going to ask.
I have Jamario Douglas on my wide receiver list too.
Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, that's cool too. I was going to mention Douglas when we got the receivers.
Well, he had the runs last week. Was that his issue?
I mean, he ate the food over there, man.
Fish and chips.
Yeah, he only played one snap in the second half, but
biscuits.
All the reasons that you spent fab on him though going into last week exist again, and he already had a solid line against the Jets. So I mean, I just think it's one of those things that happened. You kind of can still go back to him. He's cheap enough too. He's another one of those guys. He is JSN but cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe with a higher ceiling as well.
All right.
JSN's about to have like 150 yards this week.
Yeah, he's a smoke us.
Well, how many catches does he need to get to 150?
Yeah, shadow realm us.
11.
Out here talking crazy. DK's out. It's be like the most obvious. Like, why weren't you guys on this spot?
John, you wanted to talk about Breece Hall. So talk about Breece Hall and some other running backs.
Oh yeah, just look at the last month after Mayo called them soft. I mean, we got Jordan Mason in week 4 with 120 yards and a touchdown. The Dolphins, remember, both Mostert and Jalen Wright combined for 22 carries and over 160 yards. The Texans, Damian Pierce and Joe Mixon, everyone remembers in that blowout, they combined for 3 touchdowns. And then last week, of course, Tank Bigsby getting there for 2 touchdowns and 118 rushing yards. So Breece Hall now in the last 2 weeks under Ulbrich, Todd Downing, whoever you want to attribute, has out-touched Braylon Allen 41-6. Braylon Allen just doesn't get used at all anymore. So all Breece Hall, wheels up. And then, the May combination. Behind him, though, it's still Jameis Winston, as fun as that is. So I would imagine people get to, Jameis, maybe Jameis doubles with Derrick Henry as the obvious run back. Cleveland allowing the 5th highest rate of 15-yard runs. So Henry, if we think they're going to play with a positive game script, and last I checked, they were 9-point favorites, right? It just seems like an obvious click the big dog and get the hell out of the way game.
And Derrick Henry is defying all rules of age and Just spectacular. He's been awesome this year. On pace for, I think, 2,000 yards, maybe more. It's a lot. So he's
scored a touchdown in every game so far in purple and black. Should have seen it coming. And then I don't want to take all the ugly guys, but I'll name a couple. J.K. Dobbins is getting the usage, and he's been extremely inefficient, maybe because he gets too many touches on his bones over the last month now since they eliminated Gus Edwards, and then Edwards got put on injured reserve over their bye. Touch counts of 18, 17, 27, and 17 for Dobbins. But the Saints are one of only two defenses allowing over 5.4 yards per carry. They are getting Pete Warner and a couple of their guys back this week, so maybe I don't get there, but I think Dobbins, this is his first plus matchup in a little bit here. And then Javonte Williams is the other ugly one I want to mention. Maybe it's so obvious because we all know the Panthers just can't stop anyone. If ownership wants to go to Bo Nix instead, I will take Williams because it, like we mentioned with Jeremy McNichols last week, we're trying to just figure out which running back is available here. I don't know if Audric Estime is coming back into our life. Like when you fumble twice on 9 career carries, maybe you just get eliminated altogether. Javonte now has at least 13 touches in the 4 consecutive games. So yeah, I think Javonte Williams is the play here.
Yeah,
right.
I think 100% because I've already seen it in the chat a little bit too, talking about Bo Nix. And Bo Nix like isn't a ceiling play. Like he just isn't.
Right.
Like Carolina, there's only 2 quarterbacks that even have 30 pass attempts against Carolina because they suck. So like, are we counting on like Bo Nix to have like a hyper efficient game? Even last week, Bo Nix had the highest inaccurate target rate of any quarterback.
He can run a little bit.
So now that's why I think he's more of a floor play. Like Bo Nix is a throwback Konami guy. Mm-hmm. Like he runs for floor, not for ceiling. So I actually think Javonte Williams is like a smash because it's not even because it feels point chasing on the surface. But let's look over the past month of Javonte Williams. He's got 80 or more scrimmage yards in 3 of his past 4 games. He's had the workload. And then he's also been tried and true in matchups we want him to exploit and have a ceiling. 2 weeks ago, he had 3 weeks ago, he had 111 yards against the Raiders. And then he actually followed up with another 111 on Thursday night against the Saints in a matchup we want him to take advantage of. They are huge home favorites against the Carolina Panthers team. It's allowing the most rushing points per game, allowed a rushing touchdown in every game. He's $6K on FanDuel. $6K. Like I don't think there's as much of an obvious play when you talk about home field advantage, opponent, like everything. Like he's got everything in his favor. Like, and so like, yeah, he seems like a very obvious play, especially on FanDuel.
I'm surprised. Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at the ownership stuff, and it's really flat after Breece Hall and Achane on FanDuel. It's just a bunch of dudes in the teens, basically, as far as ownership. Williams is just in the fringe of that. Yeah, so it's like obviously the stuff can shake up and look different as the week progresses, but yeah, and that kind of alludes to what you were saying, John, is that there's just a slew of good running backs, and if anybody happens to separate themselves and elevate to a goofy ownership, there's 7 pivots just waiting right there if you want to go and just change things up in tournaments. Okay. And
I got one more. I still have one more guy that I think is too cheap as well. And it goes hand in hand with my take that I just had on Caleb Williams is DeAndre Swift. Over the opening 3 games, this dude is abysmal. 37 carries for 68 yards. Open season, 1.8 yards per carry, had 1 run of 10 or more yards. Over his past 3 games, 4.8 yards per carry, an explosive run on 11% of his runs, 3 touchdowns. He took advantage of 2 good matchups, but then also that Jaguars team that we talked about that stopped the run all year, he had 91 yards and a touchdown against them on the ground before factoring in the receiving work that he's done. He's turning in explosives. Washington has picked up their pass defense, but they have not stopped the run over the stretch at all still. They're still 28th in yards per carry allowed to running backs, 25th in rushing points allowed per game to backfields. They've had the highest rate of runs or 10 or more yards to running backs this season. So another guy that I think is where he's priced this week is probably going to go overlooked too in a really good spot.
We think Daniels is going to play this week, or I guess we just don't know. I mean, 50-50 at this point.
I have no clue.
I don't know either. It sounded promising.
I assume that's why Daigle left it off that game off.
Well, I'm still a little bit worried about the matchup. Like I just still typically mess with the Bears defense.
Yeah, his mom tweeted like he was fine in the middle of the game. I don't know if you guys saw that. So yeah, he's fine. And he was on the sideline and he seemed like he was good. And also like they were up like 7 touchdowns when they came out of the locker room. I was like, yeah, I guess I can just chill. And let Mariota.
The only other guy, there's one more dude too. I forgot I have my notes here because I think it's interesting to talk about from like a matchup stance. And this dude got super steamed in terms of pricing. Is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's on an absolute bender this year. This is like the year of veterans changing teams, right? Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. I think I'm missing someone else in there too, right? I mean, Saquon. Oh shit, Saquon. Jesus, yeah. These guys, because it used to be the old. Yeah, and I guess it's like these veteran running backs changing teams. The year for these guys. Joe Mixon is absolutely flourishing in Bobby Slowick's scheme right now. And with Mixon on the field this season, they've run the ball 55.6% of the time. It's the 5th highest rate in the league. What makes this interesting though is they're facing the team that they faced in week 1. If you want a box score hunt, you're like, oh my God, Joe Mixon had 30 carries against this Colts defense in week 1. Gus Bradley, after that game, did an interview where he said that they overcompensated because they were worried about the Texans wide receivers. Week 1, they're coming at you. They've got Nico Collins. They got Tank Dell. They got Stephon Diggs. What's interesting in that game is Houston ran the most 12 personnel in the league in week 1, and they've done that this season. They run 12 personnel and 34% of running plays. Well, in that week 1 matchup, Mixon had 17 runs out of 12 personnel. Guess what Gus Bradley did against those runs? He played nickel against them. He just trotted out his sub defender against 2 tight end packages. Joe Mixon averaged 7 yards per carry on those individual carries. So no Nico Collins in this matchup. They also probably are going to get DeForest Buckner back. Where is the adjustment made? Does Gus Bradley does he make the adjustment that he talked about blatantly getting wrong in week 1 in this matchup? So I think it's kind of an interesting angle there for Joe Mixon as well.
30 carries in that game. Just pulled it up. That's it's a lot of usage.
17 runs out of 12 personnel in that game for 96 yards. Just runs out of 12 personnel.
As they have done when Joe Mixon has been back there for them. Yes.
All right. Receivers. Let's go ahead. I guess let's let Rich start this time. John started last time.
We hit it upon Demario Douglas. I'd say Stephon Diggs will be a guy I'll bring up. He has 5 or more catches in every game but 1 this season. He leads the team in target share and air yards with Nico Collins off the field. And particularly, we know what Gus Bradley likes to do. He likes to play a lot of cover 3. We talk about this for years. And when Houston's faced cover 3 without Nico Collins on the field, Diggs has been the guy that's been getting the targets, almost a 30% target rate, over 2 yards per route run. So I do kind of want to get him. He's in like a nebulous price zone. I brought up Demario Douglas. That's kind of really all I got. I want to focus on the receivers that we talked about largely in the other games. I think maybe if you're going to play Bo Nix, you gamble on the squeaky wheel game for Cortland Sutton. He's that cheap. But yeah.
Is nebulous code word? Does that mean too expensive? Is that what nebulous means?
No, just kind of like it's just like in like that.
Diggs is always too expensive for
the
me.
Kind of like floaty range of pricing,
Yeah, it's kind of a wonky price, but I went on my rant in a previous show, but it's about the pricing last week being ridiculous, and everybody goes up, but not the same rate as far as going down when it comes to their success. And this is one we've been saying. I've been screaming since last year. Diggs is just always too expensive. But I guess ownership, yada yada. You can play.
I mean, this slate too, and I don't know if Daigle's going to bring up his favorite Tampa Bay wide out of choice, but like I don't even think they're required on this slate.
Right.
I think we should at least touch on it, though. If anybody has any takes on Tampa, by all means, missing their top 2 receivers. I guess Evans not officially ruled out, but it doesn't seem like he's going to play. I can't.
No, Evans is ruled out. They said he's going to be out through their week 11 bye.
Okay, I missed that. My bad.
Yeah, it's okay. There were even I missed some things. Like it went so deep this week that I forgot Treylon Burks was on IR. I was like, okay, there is too many things adding up in week 7 right now.
Easily forgettable. Do you want to knock out your receivers, the one you like, or do you want to give us the rundown on Tampa first?
Yeah, since I do waiver content, it probably seems like Jalen McMillan is my favorite receiver ever. My entire job is to show up excited to talk about the waiver guys, but I will talk about Jalen McMillan. And the answer, Dean, because you mentioned which one to go to. The funny part is that we don't know. We don't know which one's going to take the slot. It was Chris Godwin for 61% of his routes, team high mark.
It's because Evans is out.
And then Sterling Shepard played on the boundary, 72% of his routes. But now, without Godwin, without Evans, maybe they do feel more comfortable with the veteran and Shepard going straight into the slot rather than McMillan. I do think, well, I don't think. I know McMillan has a higher ceiling if given the opportunity than Sterling Shepard because we've done with this with Shepard before. The question is, I have no idea if like this is when they do it. I hope so, since the last 2 years at Washington, McMillan ran 91% of his routes from the slot. That's where he flourished. Even in 2022, since in 2023, he suffered an MCL sprain. He re-aggravated a couple times, so we really just didn't get the full allotment of what he can do. But in 2022, he had a team high 21.5% target share to Roma Dunze's 19.5% mark from Michael Penix. And the Falcons this year have funneled 40% of the targets against them into the slot. So it's like the situation we want. We want McMillan in this game from the slot. Will we get it? I don't know, but he's the one I am most excited about. But like Rich said, salary purposes, especially on FanDuel, I don't think you need it.
Yeah, I think for this week, you just play K. Dotton out of those guys. I mean, I think with Evans being out, throwing the wrinkle into the things, because I think McMillan plays the slot when Evans comes back, but I don't know if Shepard's going to play out there. Shepard's also been pretty bad in the slot in a small sample, but historically, like that, each profile is to be there. So I do think with Evans being out, it will be like Trey Palmer in the X, McMillan as flanker, and then you've got Shepard as the slot guy. You do have to pay attention though. Sunday morning, if Trey Palmer tweets that he's pissed off, you might just have to play him. But my initial thought is that K. Dotton then becomes like more of the safety valve guy, right? Sure. Like, we saw when those guys all got hurt on Monday night, like, he gets the 8 for 100 yards. He's already been earning targets. Like we have to project targets to the other guys. He's already been targeted on a career high 17% of his routes. He's run 70 routes this season with Evans actually off the field. We don't have to just go to the last week's game, and he's been targeted on 18.6% of those plays. He's not particularly like a flashy guy. He'd be more of like a cash game play. So maybe you don't even get to him because of 4K Dalton Kincaid on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, I think he's 30 because everybody played him on. I think he's 38 or 35. But he would be the guy I would look at.
It also, it may just be bad overall for Baker and that game as a whole. It's the second time they play each other. Baker got there with 3 touchdowns, but only threw for 180 yards in that game. That's the one where the Falcons kept the ball and Kirk.
Yeah, if you're chasing that Thursday night game.
Right, exactly. Happened. Yeah. So it could just be uglier and simply being the second time division opponents played too.
And we've seen, Stroud's splits without Nico Collins, and this is a guy that has Diggs and Tank Dell. Mahomes losing Rashee Rice, Stafford without his guys. Like losing these 2 guys is significant.
Otten 3.5 on DK, by the way. You're in the waiver wire streets there, Daigle. Any of the Tampa Bay receivers or Pearsall? Is Pearsall better than all of them?
Luckily the 49ers are not on this main slate, and I was so happy when I looked that up. I was like, oh, we can't.
Oh, they are though.
On FanDuel.
Oh yeah, they're on FanDuel. I forget about. Oh no. Well, it could be if we don't
still play George Kittle on FanDuel, Daigle.
If we don't get Jennings, it could be Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. I like Pearsall coming out of college. 5 rushing scores as well. Led the team in routes run in a pinch last week, 16% target share. I think Pearsall's role is safer, especially if Jennings, this is 4 consecutive DNPs now for Jennings going back to last week.
They're saying there's a chance Debo could play. I mean, that I don't know if you guys saw that, but
yeah, he got out. Yeah. Shanahan said, who knows what Shanahan, but he did say there's a chance he could play. So, to be fair, he tried to play on Sunday.
Y'all didn't even talk about Jordan Mason. I forget about the FanDuel main slate.
Oh yeah, well, Jordan Mason he's floating. He's floating on there too, man. He's floating on.
Gosh, it's harder on FanDuel. How do you? Jeez.
Well, 4K Kincaid gets you there.
And like I said, and Javonte Williams is 6K, and I think it's like that's just like a home run play. I think that's 10K for those 2 guys.
Just trying to see. I'm curious how much Lamb only hit 3% of the optimal stuff I ran. So yeah, he could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, dude, man. Sure. Listen, man, Dak against the 49ers has not been pretty.
Supposedly he's really good off a bye if you care about such things, but yeah, I don't. It's just that's another organization that just feels like there's a stench in Dallas right now. It's not great shakes. Okay,
and then Jordan Mason, yeah, another one you may not need since I don't get cheap Pearsall on DraftKings. If you want to pivot from the Bucks guys, Cedric Tillman also stands out after last week. Like his 18 PPR points, not only did he, because Elijah Moore, remember, was for whatever reason punished in the first quarter, didn't play, but Tillman still led them in targets in the first and fourth quarter when Jameis Winston came off the bench. Ran the second most
Judy led
routes.
the targets from Winston.
For when did Winston come in of the mid fourth quarter?
Yeah, I mean, just with Winston on the field, he targeted Judy 36% of the time, and then Njoku was second.
And then, the thing is, like, Tillman's 18 PPR points, though, like, that's more than Judy has had. That's the most since Judy last did that in the 2022 season, the final week. It's like he's already performed better than Judy has. So that's just another cheapie if you want to pivot away from the Bucks.
We didn't touch on it, but somebody in chat said we're talking about the cheap buck receivers. They're asking about what about the running backs? I mean, they're playing 3 guys, White, Luckbox, and the 2 receiving touchdowns. I don't know how repeatable that is. Are you guys hot any of these? White, Irving?
The fourth quarter of that game should have been put in jail.
It was a lot of suckouts going on. That's just how it goes sometimes. But, I mean, the White box score seems pretty misleading. General rules, you just don't really want running backs that, 3-headed. I don't want to say 3-headed monster because that implies they're all really good, and that's not necessarily
the case. The thing about Irving and White is like they're not even like free.
Yeah.
It'd be different, right?
Yeah, it's hard to justify. Okay. John, what do you have as far as tight ends for us?
Yeah, we touched on Hunter Henry, this whatever's going on with the Jets defense the last couple of weeks. It has allowed 7 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. And last week to the Steelers, 6 catches for 87 yards to opposing tight ends room. So I think Hunter Henry's pretty live, 11 catches from Drake May the past 2 games. And the only other one I have on my list is because it sounds like we're getting Taysom Hill back. And the last time we saw Taysom Hill with Derek Carr, Rashid Shaheed, and Chris Olave all available, they still jammed him 6 carries for 2 rushing scores on only 15 snaps before injury. I would imagine the usage gets maybe even higher with Spencer Rattler and no Rashid Shaheed. So Hill is another sneaky one I'll probably play a bit of.
We didn't mention Kamara, but he got paid, and he's playing with a broken arm or a broken wrist. What is he playing with?
Yeah, bro. Firstly, he's like hand. 6 injuries. He's got broken hand, a rib injury. His back's been bothering him.
And the one's like, "Can we sign you for 2 more years?" Like, okay, sure. We want 2 more years of this. I know he's been good when he's out, out there.
No.
But interesting circumstances. Good for him.
I'm still trying to tell myself that like we're gonna suck out with the Saints. Just trying to tell myself stories. We're not once they get everyone back.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Week two Saints was it after week 2 where all of a sudden they were going to the Super Bowl, and then from then it was just all downhill.
It was when you play the Panthers and Cowboys, you go to the Super Bowl afterwards. Yes.
I always tell Rob, Rob the bit. I never check my best ball teams, but I know for a fact my highest owned player is Rashid Shaheed. So
you don't need to check it this year at all.
Perfect. No, I absolutely don't need to check him.
I wish
it's a felony not checking your best ball teams.
I do agree with Rob, but I respect that you have that kind of self-restraint because I still maybe I'm a glutton, but I check them and go, man, this is not going well. I try to find that one team where I can tell myself a story, and there's a few, but not a lot, and not enough. Okay, John, tight ends, what do we got?
I just gave my 2, so I will spin it off to Rich because Dalton Cade is also apparently 4K on FanDuel. So,
I mean, it's the most ludicrous. I just would love to know. I just want to know how it happened. Like, what was the rationale? But yeah, we kind of talked about everyone want to play. You've got Kraft and Ingram in the first game we talked about. You've got Kincaid just on FanDuel being priced down, a weird pricing, like something went wrong. We talked about. I brought up Otten a little bit. You can by all means, you can keep playing Brock Bowers if you want, and then David Njoku as well. So like there's a smorgasbord of options. Dean said tight ends back. If you're on FanDuel, you can pay up for George Kittle, especially if guys are going to be out.
I think like any spend up tight end on FanDuel is probably a little bit against the grain because who knows how it's going to shake out.
I mean, he's how much is he going to be on large field rosters?
40%. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number. Does that sound?
Especially at tight end where people will just walk away. Like because people don't care. People play shitty tight ends at 4K and walk away. Like people were like, I'm gonna play Grant Calcaterra and just like walk away from the table. Like you're getting like, it's not like Dalton Kincaid is like he's underperformed this year, but he's 4K. It's like you don't get players like that at 4K.
With again, Dawson.
And people probably think
we're
talking about people when they hear 4K, they probably think we're talking about DraftKings.
Like Brock Wright is 4-3. Adam Troutman is 4-3.
There you go. You just said it all.
Drew Samples 4-2. I don't know how this happens. And I know he's been kind of disappointing this year, but still.
But it's still an accident. There's no way it wasn't.
Something goofy had to happen. And maybe it's too late. They really can't go back and
I actually thought RG might have had it wrong. I had to pull up the app and build a lot. I was like, I gotta see, like, there's no way he's 4K. And then I was like, oh, he is. Like, all right.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good week to play a little bit more on FanDuel because most people, like, again, a lot of people are using optimizers and things of that sort, but nobody's scrolling down and like, oh, wait, Kincaid? Nobody's passing by. Like Jordan. Once you hit the
first of
Jordan
all, no
Akins,
one was
you
ever
stop.
looking to see what his price was to begin with. But definitely not going that far down.
Yeah. So maybe I'll play a little bit more on FanDuel this week and get my 2 catches from Kincaid for 17 yards. All right.
Yeah. Baby.
That is it. That is it for week 8 as far as our content. If you do want to stick around, we're going to talk movies in a second. I'm really, really curious to get you guys' thoughts on the movie we watched this week, The Lobster. We'll discuss that in a second. You guys heard producer Rob, and we jump in just a second momentarily, and he'll be giving his opinions on The Lobster as well. And then we got to get Daigle to assign us a movie to watch going forward. But if you have no interest in that, by all means, appreciate y'all listening. Before you leave, though, Daigle's going to tell you where you can find them if you don't know. You should know. It's week 8 at this point. Come on. You either know or you don't. You should. If you care, you know. Daigle, tell them where to go.
EstablishTheRun.com. I actually started the change log. I usually don't even get to that till injury reports on Friday, but I started it earlier this morning on Wednesday for everyone just because of the trade and all the injuries happening. So if you have Wednesday waivers, if you have Saturday waivers, you can go there right now, EstablishTheRun.com. It's all updated.
Rich?
Hey, sharpfootballanalysis.com. I'm writing up all these games, every player in every game. If you don't have a sub, obviously the primetime games are always free. Every week you can check those out if you're building showdown lineups or just building some player props. Watch the game and do some player props. Lots of nuggets in there to get you there.
Every game, all 16 of them. All right, let's go ahead and bring in producer Rob. We're going to talk about The Lobster. The Lobster from 2015. What's up, Rob? Rob, was your event this past weekend? Did that go down? I know you talked about it at the last show. I think it was this past weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah, last Friday night we had our first ever ticketed live show for Hometown Ghost Stories in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Had over 80 people show up to the event, which was really cool. Had a blast. Talked about a place we said we would never talk about just for the live. And this weekend we are going and hosting an entire weekend on Block Island, which is in Rhode Island, which is really redundant. But, and we're going to be doing investigations. And if you haven't been to Block Island, take the ghost stuff away. It's just a beautiful place to visit out here in New England. Pretty forgotten about, but it's people go to Martha's Vineyard. They go to Nantucket. Block Island's kind of over by itself, and you have to take a ferry over and stuff, but it's a little quieter than those other two and just a little more my speed.
I picture that's like where they filmed Shutter Island for some reason in my head. I feel like that's sort of what it looks like, but I have no idea. I've not been to that area, but maybe one day we will give it a visit. Okay. The Lobster. The Lobster was my choice. 2016 release. According to Rotten Tomatoes, it is a romance, comedy, fantasy, drama, and sci-fi. It is all those things. Dystopia movie. Let's see. What is the actual synopsis? In a dystopian society, single people must find a mate within 45 days or be transformed into an animal of their choice. That is that is a very specific, no other movie. Like you can't get this confused with anything else. Nothing else is like this. I'm really curious to get your opinion. I watched this maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. I've been wanting to give it a rewatch. It was weirder than I remembered. I did not realize it was as weird as I remembered. It's like, oh, this is really weird. Not necessarily in a bad way, in a good way, but I'm curious to get your take. Let's go to John first because you're going in cold. Did you know anything about this movie when you hit play?
No, in fact, I thought the premise this entire time, because I've never seen it, I was going on the premise that he did become a lobster eventually in this movie. And that's not kind of what happens. This is a weird one, Dean. This is a Dean movie, if I've ever seen one. And I still appreciate it. I liked it a lot. I found myself laughing out loud in a couple moments because it's entirely dry. It is completely like black, dark humor as possible that tries to get you to laugh in those moments that it takes itself so seriously for, unintentionally. Well, no, I should say intentionally. It is purposely staying dry, but then attempting to make you laugh, including like when Colin Farrell kicks the little girl's shin. Absolutely great. I think dying and while the woman complaining about the blood and the biscuits was also pretty funny as well, while she's having tea with a dead body in front of her. It's just I enjoyed it. Again, it's a lot. It's very confusing, but also what made it fun, I don't know about fun, but also what was kind of shocking is that how the violence too also comes out of nowhere. It like just goes from 0 to 100 in seconds, and you do not expect it at all. It's a good movie, but again, it's a little strange.
This is your second watch, Rich. What is this? How you remembered it was a little bit different. Is this one you watched with the wife or the family?
No, but interesting enough, I'm the one that's going on almost 20 years of marriage to talk about this movie, because it's literally a movie that's about the tropes of dating and the how absurd some of the stereotypes are. I was curious to get Daigle's take, the wandering soul of the group, because he's been finding love, the search for love. I like what this movie's trying to sell as an idea. I don't like the execution that they're trying to put in, because anytime you think about this movie as the movie past the theme, it falls apart. Like nothing in this movie would make sense under the premise of the movie. One, like they don't explore the dystopia world because they can't, right? Like they can't. Like they to make that any interesting. So we can't figure out why they're making people even have to fall in love. Is it to reproduce? Is it what? Like it, we don't know. So
because it's the most important thing. Because in this world, it's just that's what's valued the most.
Yeah, but we don't know. Also, like my take on it is they're not turning people into animals. Like there's no technology in this world. So I definitely don't believe that there's something that they actually are turning. I think it's like a red herring the whole movie.
Well, there's no advanced technology. There's just everything similar to what we have right
yes. When the maid scene where he takes her into the transformation room and and Rachel Weisz is literally like, what did she turn into? No answer. I can't tell you. I think he knows that like there was no thing. And that's why I think that plays in the end of the movie too, why he doesn't go through with, going through with the actual eyeball. So I think it's ambiguous. But
are we certain of that? I don't know. That.
That's my read on it is that he doesn't do it, or else we would have seen it. Like, so I like the ideas. It said I don't like the execution as much. I think a lot of the stuff in this movie kind of falls apart when you start to think about like what they're doing, especially the group in the forest and their anarchy, like the fight back, the rebellion. A lot of this just doesn't work like from a schematic stance, but it just like, and it gets in this movie, Rob usually when it complains about this movie's 35 minutes too long, like easily. Yeah. Like way too long. So I like a lot of the themes. I like what they're trying to tell me, because we all have to. We all, even if you're not married, or everyone knows a couple that's together that shouldn't be together, and everyone on the outside looking in knows it. They probably know it, and they're still putting on this like facade that they belong together out in public that's not fooling anybody. We all know those people as well.
Rob, you haven't said anything yet. What do you got?
So I'm with Daigle on the fact that this movie had scenes that made me laugh more than like more movies that are actual comedies. That scene where the woman jumps off the building and she's laying there screaming. I couldn't stop laughing when Colin Farrell came over and he's like, I just hope she dies real quick. Actually, I hope she dies in agony. But wait, I actually just want to have a lie down, and I hope that doesn't interrupt it like that. That whole scene killed me. I don't know. I had to send that scene to friends. That's how funny I thought it was, that I thought would enjoy it. So I really enjoyed some of the humor of this. You're always going to lose points to me when you kill a dog or a rabbit, as those are the pets that I have.
What about a donkey?
They held on the dog scene too long. I mean, I guess that was intentional, but they really held in that scene a couple seconds too long for me.
Yeah, the donkey.
I guess that's kind of the point.
Didn't love the donkey scene either. John. That was not something I enjoyed.
And it's like the first 5 seconds too. It's like good. I at least could have started with a warning here.
Yeah, a little jarring on that. I hate being the it's too long guy all the time, but as Rich said, a little bit too long. We could have got to where we needed to get, but I enjoyed the movie overall. It's like a mixture of a Napoleon Dynamite Wes Anderson film with a darker tone.
Those are two things I don't like, and I like this movie. That's funny. You say those two things.
You didn't like.
I don't get Wes Anderson. Maybe that's
I was gonna say Monty Python. It kind of felt like just like much more serious.
Okay, I can see that too. It's just, and then I went down this whole rabbit hole because Rich had to say something in the comments that they weren't turning people into animals. So I had to read this whole Reddit thread about that.
Yeah,
situation.
I was going to ask because I haven't thought about that. What do you have? What can you report back to us?
So what people were saying is there are mentions of like human organs being harvested in this, and they do sort of make it a point to showcase people that allegedly were turned into animals,
right?
Not having reactions to the people that they would have known, right? So one of those is the girl slaps her friend who found love, and she was getting turned into a pony. And as
great hair,
she's great hair. She's turned into the pony, and she doesn't have the reaction. So that's what some of the people are going off of. And again, the technology thing, they're like, they have all the shit we have right now. Why do they have this random thing that they can turn people into animals? So it's probably false.
We
like,
can't fix eyeballs, can't cure blindness, but we can turn people into animals.
yeah. Well, you could change their entire DNA. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
I think it's intentionally meant to be that way too. It's just probably like how you treat it. My read is that it's a red herring.
So the dog was just a dog, is what you're saying,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he was part of the example. Like when you threw the ball, he went and got the ball. The only thing is the dog was reacting to certain things that were happening when he was signing in to the place, and that's why I thought it was real in the movie, because the dog was like, "No, don't do this" type of deal.
Yeah, they don't do nothing with it though. I think it's just there to
yeah. So it's. I think they try to make you think too much, and I don't love the Sopranos ending. It wasn't,
Inception. I was thinking Inception, and it was sort of an ambiguous style.
Like I said, I mean, I love the themes and the themes that he brings up, the questions, but he has no commentary on them. Like they don't go anywhere. There's no solutions. It's not like, hey, this is silly that we do all these things. Well, okay, what should we be doing instead? And there's nothing that he does bring up good ideas, but then they're not executed.
I don't think that definitely wasn't Colin Farrell's fault though, because like I thought he did an amazing job.
It's a beautiful movie too,
portraying like the seriousness of what he was looking for. Yeah,
it was written so well. Like just the scenes were written so great for the comedy aspect, and the lines were delivered perfectly by like all the actors in this movie to make it actually feel the way that it was supposed to be felt. So
what do you think the way it was spoken though? Like you said, the lines were delivered great. Like they intentionally, the way they were speaking was just so robotic, I guess. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yeah. So I think that was the portrayal of the society they were trying to show. Like in this like quote unquote dystopian, like alternate universe. So I enjoyed it. Like I found a lot of fun in the movie. There was a lot of stuff that made me laugh. Too long. And I do like the theme where he's so disgusted with his friend for lying about the nosebleed thing, and like drops that whole bombshell on the ship, and there's a potential that he does the same thing at the end of this movie, right? So like, did he become the thing he hated at the end, or
he had to have something in common with her? That's kind of the one thing you're taught.
But did he lie about it? Is the question?
Yeah. I'm not as sold as Rich. Rich said he walked away, and I don't know. And I think that does spawn an interesting conversation. Do you have a thought on that, John? Have you considered, or you feel one way or the other, what Colin Farrell did at the end of this movie?
I felt like I was leaning towards him doing that. That's why I was kind of waiting to hear a scream or a drop of a tool from the bathroom as she was sitting there having tea at the end. I felt like he did it, but yeah,
me too.
It was intentionally left wide open.
How do you fake it if you don't, though? Like you're gonna need medical attention if you stab yourself with a knife.
Correct.
He can't walk out and be like, "Yep, did it. Can't see. Blood's everywhere." You wouldn't believe it if you saw.
Well, he can just tell her he did it. Why does he have to have any like blood? And
Listen,
why is that on this?
I that was a moment where I also had like my hand like kind of peeking through my fingers. I was very much glad we didn't get it done. So
yeah,
I just watched Wick 3 with Braden, and I forgot there's that part in like the open where he stabs that dude in the eyeball, and I was like, ooh, I forgot about this. I'm not great with the eyeball stuff.
Same.
Yeah.
Eyeball stuff always gets me too.
I'm like, oh,
Is that the one with Boban in the library?
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Yorgos Lanthimos, like you said, he's the writer, he's the director. You guys are talking about him, and he's just always interesting. He's just always interesting. He's going to give you an interesting movie. You don't necessarily automatically like it, but it's going to be something different for sure.
Did you guys think about what animal you would want to be turned into if this was the situation? That's what I was curious about.
Yes, I was going to ask that. Did you have an answer?
I had two answers that I was going back and forth, and I can't decide. Because like I want something that like I don't have to worry about a lot of shit. You know what I mean? So I was like, do I want to be a whale or do I want to be an elephant? Because I'm not going to be like
well, the ivory tusk thing, you got to worry about that. You're an elephant.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know, man. I'm big at that point. I got a trunk.
It does seem pretty cool to have a trunk. The concept, that does seem like a fun concept.
So I'm back and forth. I mean, I guess whaling is another thing that you have to worry about. I'd have to be very specific about where I was as a whale. I don't know. Those were the two I came up with, but I'm not sold completely yet.
You got an answer, Rich or John?
I gave it 0 thoughts.
I just didn't think about it. I'm sorry to disappoint.
Well, Rich gave it no thoughts because he thought that technology doesn't exist. It was all a ruse. It was all a red flag.
It was a ruse, man.
You just weren't doing it.
A bald eagle in America where people really don't hunt you at all and you're kind of free to do whatever, right? Maybe that's the answer.
Flying is like the nuts, right? Like that feels like something that, it's definitely different.
Eagle,
I don't think
good.
Yeah,
there was
an eagle.
Because like eagles are badass. Like real eagles are huge.
Yeah, gigantic.
What do eagles eat?
Everything.
Whatever they want.
They eat like animals, dude. Like,
elephants.
Okay.
Like eagles eat like animals.
Rob.
I wish they would have introduced the character who chose to be a camel, since there was a camel lingering around in the back at one point.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was the other thing they were doing to kind of throw you on if it was real or not, too, by having like the random animals within the woods.
You guys said the movie is too long, and I can kind of feel that. But also, I wanted more John C. Reilly. There wasn't enough John C. Reilly. The scene where he got lambasted for self-pleasure was pretty bonkers.
Why is that the punishment?
Oh yeah, they had him stick his hand in a toaster, and they forced it. They turned it on, and didn't seem like a lot of fun.
That could be our new punishment for who comes in last every week in our.
I'm gonna start trying much harder for sure. I'll just put a cash line of it, and I'll finish third every single week. That's my game theory. No AOC, nothing like that. Okay. Anything else we should say as far? I was gonna say, do we recommend this? This is one of those movies you can only recommend to certain people, right? Like I know a guy who would like this, but no way a broad recommendation.
No.
Most people would reject this. Just the sentence of the description of the movie, it's like, well, wait a second, I can't. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds completely bonkers. But if you like it, you might love it.
Got to know your audience on this one. I knew exactly who to send that clip to when I saw it. I knew which friends, like who needs to see this, who needs to see this movie. And then there's like probably 25% of the people in your life that will like this movie. The other 75% would probably get you committed to some sort of asylum if you sent them this movie.
If they liked Poor Things, we talked about last week, then you give them this movie as well.
Yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos. This was nominated for 1 Oscar, by the way. Let's see, BAFTA award. That's the British Oscars, I believe. Best British film, nominated for Best British Film. British Independent Film Award. So it got a lot of buzz. I guess that kind of leads into the critic rankings and the audience rankings on the Lobster. Let's go ahead and knock out IMDb first. Rich, I see you're on my screen on the left, so I'm going to start with you.
IMDb, I feel like this is a flat 7.
Rob?
This is a tough one. I'm going to say 6.3 on IMDb.
Okay, Daigle.
I figured critics would like it more.
This is like a non. That's Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In that case, you said 6.3, Rob?
Yeah.
I'm going to go lower. I'm going to go 5.9.
7-1. So
Wow.
Rich might get both showcase showdowns within 0.1. Yeah, that's close enough. 7-1 on IMDb. Daigle, redeem yourself. Give me 2 numbers for Rotten Tomatoes. Give me the critics and give me the audience.
And this is percentage, right?
Yeah, out of 100. Yeah, up to 100%.
Yeah. Audience. That was pretty telling, I think. Let's still go 66%. And critics, let's go 79.
Rob?
I guess that IMDb score makes sense at 7.1. This is definitely a movie that people that smell their own farts were rushing to review.
Right.
So, yeah.
That was my thought.
Yeah.
Put that review in there. That should be your review.
100% my thought.
Let's go 60% audience, 91 critic.
Yeah, I feel like this is the high critic score. So yeah, I'll say 88 critic, and then lower audience score, I'll say 75. Like, or I should say 70, I guess, to keep it like 7 flat versus 70.
87% audience, 87% Rich. So you're on it, man. You're on it. I'm sorry. That's the critics.
Critic.
87% for critics, 270 reviews, and the audience. Not surprisingly enough, it's kind of weird.
More
so only 65% for the audience. Let's go ahead and give it our own score before we move on. And John is going to tell us what movie we're watching next week. But yeah, Daigle, do you have a wrestler for us?
I do. And it needed to be a weird individual who also got himself over. It was so weird, kind of like The Lobster as a cult classic. And the first one that came to mind is Al Snow, who got really popular in the late 90s because he wrote "Help Me" backwards on his forehead and carried around a mannequin head that would talk to him. I recall also one of my very first wrestling t-shirts. I asked my mom, I was like, yeah, I like this guy, Al Snow. She was like, okay, can I see the t-shirt you're trying to buy? And it literally, like the Got Milk commercials from the mid 90s, it said on there, Got Head. And she was like, you can't have this. There's zero chance you're going to wear this around school.
Amazing.
Fair enough.
I was hoping he wouldn't have made sense, but I really wish he would have. Is the Red Rooster would have been perfect for this but he doesn't add up for this movie.
By the way, also part of my grading system every week is Rob telling me who he wishes I would have picked.
I know. I'm just saying he wasn't the right choice, but like based on the character, I wish he would have been.
Oh, I appreciate someone else who actually understands all the references.
You know,
I Googled weird wrestler, and the first guy that came up was Bastion Booger, and this guy has got to look. Do yourself a favor and Google this dude. This is I don't know if he's a throwback, but this is he's got a
Mantar would have been another fun one, Daigle.
I don't know how to describe this guy, but he is spectacular. All right, Rob, what do you got?
I'm going to give it a 3.6 out of 5 for me. I think that's about where I am with it. Again, there are issues with it, but just the simple fact that it made me laugh more than a lot of comedies that come out nowadays. I give it respect for that.
I feel like a lot of people wouldn't laugh at this. Like, I think it's just some people would find it funny, some people just wouldn't.
I laughed out loud.
And that's rare.
As that woman died on the ground. can stop laughing.
You're still laughing about it.
Rich, you have Rich, do you have a weird tight end for us?
Not so much a weird one, but my review of this movie is that I like the idea of this movie. I like the questions it's proposing. There's a couple parts of this movie I like, but overall, I just didn't find it a very entertaining product. So by that, I think it's a Colby Fleener.
Oh, wow, what a great call.
That's a good one.
He's got a spectacular hair, right? Kobe Fleener, remember?
The great
Is
hair.
that-
Great hair.
that's
He
what
did.
we're-
He turned into a pony.
He's like the original Kyle Pitts, right? Like where we just like, can this just happen, please?
Kobe
Oh, man.
Fleener, let's see, what was his best year? It looks like 2014, 774 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's that's pretty solid. 608 the previous season with 4 touchdowns.
There were some good moments. The package, we like the idea of Kobe Fleener.
Yeah,
I just don't think it totally got there.
he never quite broke through, but yeah, he showed flashes. I will.
I give great
I go to-
consideration to these tight end picks, by the way. I want you to know.
Rob, did you want to critique Rich's tight end pick as well, or just
No, that's too hard. I like that was such a
Perfect.
great pick for it. That like,
perfection.
you can't even argue that one.
I love that he's spending like 10 minutes, 20 minutes trying to figure out who it is. He's super, super busy writing up team number 31 of 32 for the week. And you're like, well, what tight end is the
Buddy, I
Lobster?
got to that Saints Chargers game this week, and a little piece of me didn't make it.
He's like, I will become a lobster, so I don't have to write up this game.
So I'm basically doubling up your score, Robbie. You go to 5, well, I go to 100. And I'm going to give it a 71 out of 100. I just respect the creativity. I think it's different and it's original. It's not a perfect movie, but it's different. And it's not something I'm going to watch a lot, but I'm glad I watched it again. I was happy to revisit it. Daigle, you won this week. Do we have some options? Have you had one? Do you have one already pinpointed for us? What are we watching going forward?
We're going to harken back to conversations we've had on this show in the past couple of weeks, and we're going to go ahead and knock one of them out, like trying to kill the tight end every week. We are going a choice of 2 movies. One is Blade,
Hell
since
yeah.
we need to eventually reach that. The other is Blade 2, since we eventually need to reach that. So choose wisely.
Well, Blade 3.
Am I
Just
asking
2
you a dumb
choices.
question? Do I have to? Do you have to watch Blade to understand? I mean, I'm sure you can understand. Okay, wait, I get it. The guy's a vampire and he's killing people. But do I need to have to watch the first one to fully get the second one?
You should, I would say. I don't think it's a necessity thing, but I think you should watch the first one before you watch the second one.
It's probably time we watch the first one. That Dean watches the first one.
Yeah.
I also haven't watched it in like a decade, so I
Yeah,
would
it's
like
been
to
a
go
long
back and
time.
see it.
I think I watched it last year, but
For the first
I will
time?
obviously what. Come on, Dean.
Well, I don't know.
Who am I, Dean?
Rob, this is you have to win this week coming up. This is your month. This is your big.
I
I know. I keep losing it at the end. And honestly, this last week, there's not that I win in DFS every week, but there's usually 2 slates a year that as I look at them, I can't decipher what I want to do. And I should just withdraw. Just be like, you know what, wave the white flag.
Just do
What's
nothing.
the fun of
It's
that?
actually good advice, though, to be honest. Like, you're
This-
allowed to take weeks off.
This last week,
Yeah.
I should have taken off because I could
I
not.
think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, it was
It's my
not.
best week of the year.
I couldn't figure it out. I figured out the construction where I knew it was going to be a 3 running back week and I wanted to pay up for some of these running backs, but the epitome was my Jordan Love team in our contest where I nailed running backs and then everything around it was pretty garbage for the most part. So yeah. But we're going to win this week, I feel like.
And
Even though-
in all fairness, the last 2 weeks as well, literally you've lost on the last drive both
Yeah.
times. I didn't even
know.
realize. I was going back to grab my Roto Tracker results and insert them. I didn't even realize I won that contest until I went back and looked. I was like, oh, those 10 pass attempts for Aiden O'Connell actually helped out.
So
Yeah.
Rob didn't win last week, but Halloween is next Thursday.
Yeah.
Rob, do you have anything that maybe we haven't seen that you could recommend going into Halloween weekend or Halloween for us just as a bonus?
Well, so my Halloween recommendation, did we watch it last year? Did we do Trick or Treat last year?
We did do Trick or Treat.
So that's always a classic for me for
Is there
Halloween.
anything new, anything off the radar? We don't have our fingers in the pulse, like Winnie the Pooh 7.
Maxine
We also-
just came out. I don't know if you guys have been following that trilogy.
We also did
that seems good.
we did Martians last year too, right? Not Martians, Attack of the what's the movie? The Killer Clowns? Killer Clowns from Outer
No, we
Space.
did that for Rob's show.
Yeah, we did it on my
Oh,
show.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw it many years ago. I missed out on that one.
I like
No,
that you
yeah.
haven't seen that one.
It's still good.
Dean brings up a good point. I think the best horror trilogy, I haven't seen the new Terrifier, so like let's exclude that for a minute. But the best horror trilogy that's come out in recent years is the X trilogy, which is X, Pearl, and Maxine. All very solid movies. My personal favorite is Pearl, which I think you can actually start with because it's a prequel to X. So, and they're sort of all different vibes, even though it's a trilogy.
What's the lead's name? She's really good. What's her name?
Mia Goth.
Yeah, she's very good at playing that character. And
Multiple
Pearl,
characters.
And I think doesn't she write? I think she's involved in the writing too, if not mistaken. Or,
Yeah, so
I mean,
she did
some sort of production.
She had a lot to do in that whole production of that movie. She plays multiple characters throughout the series and she just crushes all of them. But Pearl's sort of like this movie we watched today, where it is a horror movie that not everybody will get, but if you like it, you're really gonna like it. It has a real vibe to it that it's so different. And the last scene in that movie, without saying anything else, was just so different. Like, it just, watch Pearl if you're looking for something fun.
The monologue was amazing.
Yes, that's
amazing.
what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that was all. I think that was. I don't know if there's any tricks or not, but I think that was all one take.
Yeah, that was a continuous shot, and it is some of the best acting I've ever seen in general. So
good. Yeah. After I finished watching the movie, I went back. I said, I got to see that scene again. I got to watch it. I just got to watch that one more time because that was. So yeah, me and you, Rob, where we agree. Yeah, I've been following along, and I'm going to watch. Do not watch The Watchers. Have you seen The Watchers?
I haven't watched The Watchers yet. I have to watch the new Salem's Lot this week at some point for my next review. And then I just saw that the movie Crackoon came out, which is about.
Of course. What?
Excuse me?
Is that with a C or a K? Is that a raccoon merged with some other?
No, just a raccoon on crack that goes around killing people.
Aren't they all? I assumed all raccoons were on cocaine.
For the makers of Cocaine Bear.
So there's extremes of everything there for you guys if you're looking for our horror movies this year.
By the way, I didn't ever answer. I want to be a cocaine bear. I just realized that. That's what I'm going to say.
All right.
Is that an option?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. We've been here long enough. We do appreciate those of you that have hung out with us long enough the entire time. We got all the pleasantries out of the way. We got all the plugs out of the way. Win something week 8 on behalf of producer Steve, Rob, and John, and Rich. I was Dean. Go win something. We're out of here. Bye.